Welcome to the Brotherly Ballers podcast with your hosts, Jack Vickers and Tyler Herman.
And this is MinneZona Sports Live. We are back. Yes, episode 220 episodes of MinneZona Sports Live. What the heck? How did we do it? I don't know. Anyway, I'm your host, DJ Mattie C, a.k.a. Matt Callahan, a.k.a. Callahan, a.k.a. Mattie C, etc., etc., etc. And all the way from Granite City Studios in St. Cloud, Minnesota, Vold, Shield. What is going on there, Shield?
Dude, what a time to be alive. We are in the season of giving.
Yeah.
We are 1 week away from Christmas. I mean, we're going to have ourselves a hellacious snowstorm make its way through the Granite City area here. Of course, the day of my birthday, which is tomorrow, but no needed to say happy birthday or anything from any of the owners. And we are this much closer to seeing Carson Wentz being a starting NFL quarterback once again. Why not be for the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, and ahead of the rematch with NDSU and South Dakota State in the FCS playoffs? What a time. What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive indeed. And if you guys have been following the social medias, we have special guests. And no, it is not Double Trouble this week, but because they were last week. But anyway, without further ado, we welcome our friends from the Brotherly Ballers podcast. Yes, Jack Vickers, Tyler Herman. Welcome back, gentlemen. Yes. How we doing? What's going on?
We're good. Thank you guys for having us back again. We'll see if we can have a different version of a Double Trouble this week. But yeah, we're into some playoff push. So our fantasy focused podcast especially is it's in the nitty gritty. It's in the big moments here. So we're excited.
And speaking of, go ahead, Tyler. Yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm sorry you guys got the snowstorm running through again. I'm out here on the East Coast in Charlotte. It was 67 today, so I feel bad for y'all.
I hate you.
I'm jealous. I really am jealous. I'm not gonna lie. And you know, we're so used to it by now. We've been through so many snowstorms and stuff like that.
It's all right.
It's all right. It's all right. So tonight, obviously, we have to talk about fantasy football now because last year we were at the end of the season, I believe, and we were just kind of going through an overview of stuff, asking these guys questions. But now we're into the playoffs of fantasy football this time around. So this is a perfect time to do the crossover episode with you gents as well. So we'll be doing that, and then obviously Tater Tot Hot Take shortly right after as well. We'll be talking about the Vikings' victory over those Chicago Bears, and we'll talk a little Vikings too towards the end of our segment here with these guys, and then after that we've got ARA. Voldy's got some ARAs lined up, ready to go, and Shield shout-outs as well to round up things. And a quick reminder of Voldy this week, Pick'em, and these guys know it very well because, again, if you guys are in the Pick'em, you know the deal. You could win a signed Drake London mini helmet, a signed Breece Hall mini helmet, and a signed Terrell Davis mini helmet as well. Nice. So that's up for grabs. And the MinneZona bundle, obviously, as well. So, Voldy, this week we are giving away something. Can you tell the zoners what it is this week?
Not only can I tell you, I can actually show you one of these bad boys, limited edition MinneZona Sports Live Adidas branded hat there for you. So be sure to get those picks in. Be competitive because it's been a pretty good last couple of weeks for your boy here. So I'm slowly but surely crawling my way back into the thick of things here. So who knows, might mess around and win me one of them hats. But definitely you can't win unless you make your picks. Yeah.
That's true. That's very true. And you know who's doing really well with picks and who's in the top three? Tyler over here. Tyler, how you feeling about that up there? You might only have to give 2 away. I mean, this is great.
I told you guys I knew what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a while. I wasn't just going to give these away. I'm not that nice. I wanted you guys to compete for it a little bit. So I've been up there the entire year. Jack was there for a little bit, and we slowly slide off as he started to try to make his comeback. But I'm telling you guys, I'm only giving away 2. I'm staying up here in that top 3.
I like that.
Unless someone knocks you off, who knows?
That's right. We'll see.
So we shall see. So let's get into some fantasy football talk here, guys. So this season's been, I'd say it's been like pretty good, to say the least. Unfortunately, I only have one team going still, and that is in the MinneZona Listener League. I do, unfortunately, play Tyler this week. I think it's going to be a very, very tough matchup. I had 180 points last week. I don't know if I can repeat that from this past week, but we shall see how that goes. But I got knocked out in my other leagues as well. So, but no one cares about that because, it's just me. But what are your guys' thoughts on this fantasy football season overall? What are some things that you're like, dang, that's things are going well with this. So let's start with Tyler. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, for me, this was kind of the year of the running back resurgence, is really what it felt like. It seemed like coming into this year, everything was talk of the wide receivers, right? The running backs had just been falling off, and there wasn't any bell cows left in the league. And Saquon, turns out, he's very good at football, and he turned everybody's mindsets around. Then we started to see the double backfields of the Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, obviously hurt now, but I feel like it was a big resurgence for the running backs, and I feel like they're going to start creeping toward the closer first round in next year's drafts, and the wide receivers are going to start to fall back down because there's just been so many injuries and so many inconsistencies, and it seems like teams are reverting to what they used to do a couple years ago and starting to give their running backs more touches. So there's 12 running backs over the 220 PPR point threshold right now, and there's only like 4 receivers. So those top running backs are always going to be the tried and true bread and butter for you in round 1, and I think we see that switch again from running back or from wide receiver back to running back in 2025.
Ooh, I like that. That's interesting to me because a lot of people were saying that Saquon is going to have a down year. Were you one of those guys saying, he probably won't do much, or were you one of those guys that's like, he's going to be raring to go?
I will say Jack was more in on him than me. I won't say I was absolutely smash in. The craziest part about this, and you guys will love this stat, Saquon has been tackled at the 1-yard line 11 times. He has scored 0 touchdowns. God. Jalen Hurts has 10 1-yard touchdowns, and then they did 1 pass play. So Saquon could have potentially 11 more touchdowns that he got tackled at the 1-yard line, and then the Jalen Hurts tush push has pushed them all in. So, by the way, Saquon still the RB1, even without those 11 touchdowns. So you put a phenomenal running back against the best offensive line in football. You can just imagine what would happen if they didn't have Jalen Hurts.
Honestly, it's just insane to me. Just that stat in itself, how many points he could have had is just, oh my gosh. I didn't even realize that. And he's like on pace to, breaking Dickerson's record, even though, I don't know if he will, not saying he will, but, this last game he was 66 yards or something, but yeah. That could
It'd be a big climb. It'd be about 150 yards per game here for the rest of it.
Yeah.
And just to put, again, all of this into context, yes, he's running back 1. He's 40 points clear of running back 2.
Nice.
He's got over 300, and the next closest is 265, and that's Kamara. So he is absolutely winning you your league. And me in Zona. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I like that. I agree, and I think it's kind of the year of the running back. Like Kyron Williams, I feel like's a guy that you can really rely on. He's in the Zoner League or the Zoner League for me, and he's just been killing it. And Aaron Jones kind of has those big spurts here and there and whatnot too. So very cool. Jack, what has surprised you most here this season?
Yeah, no, we're going to kind of reverse roles here because normally I'm kind of the glass half full, optimistic, holding out hope guy, and Tyler's like the more realist. So we're going to kind of flip things up. He had a lot of good points about some happy stuff from the league this year. If I was summarizing fantasy football in one word, I'm going to go negative and just say injuries this year. That's always kind of the thing. That's the cliche answer to give in fantasy, because I think every year we forget how many injuries there were the previous years. But it's kind of been a little bit flipped. Like Tyler's talked about the resurgence of running backs. Usually running backs are the position that you can count on. Like, you only estimate them to play 12, 13 games, but missing with a lot of injuries and like little ones here and there. Receivers are usually safer, and for whatever reason this year, a ton of them have been missing, especially some top guys. So to talk about a few, like Rashee Rice, he was my guy pick from the start of the year. Looked like a breakout year for him in his second season, and week 3 he's out for the rest of the year. Just a fun fact, a sad fact for myself, yours truly. I have a dynasty league with 3 of my top receivers that all went out with ACL tears this year. Stephon Diggs, Brandon Ayuk, and Chris Godwin, who was the wide receiver 2 through week 7 before getting hurt. So all other big name guys that are doing well, and they're all just season ending. It's not even like knocking them out for a game or two. On top of that, with other positions, we've got like in the top 24 ADP, that's kind of all the big hitters, where if you lose those, you're probably not going to have a good season. So Mr. Madden Curse himself, CMC with the 101 this year. He's out through week 11, comes back 2 weeks, and everybody who held on, like yours truly in Zona, was like, here we go. If I can survive now, I've got this in the bag. And then he's out 2 more weeks later for the rest of the season. So Puka Nacua, end of the first round pick. He was out for the first 8 weeks. Obviously, that's tough to survive there. Chris Olave, Nico Collins, 2 big wide receiver 2s in the second round, poised for breakout years, missed a good chunk of time in the beginning of the season and in the middle. And then other guys too, like we're not even talking about people that got hurt themselves, but just big time players that got affected by injuries, like CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 1 and 2 ADP wise to start the year. Both have had pretty rough value wise seasons based on their quarterbacks being out. So it's just been a year that's been you've had to kind of stay water, stay flexible, and just pivot and find those waiver wire options more than normal, because if you lose a mid-round guy, it's not the end of the world. You can bounce back from that. But you're losing your first or second round pick, it's tough sledding. So
yeah, I agree. And the thing, another kind of player that I kind of want to throw in here too, at the beginning of the season, there were some question marks about Jordan Addison, for instance. He had the ankle injury in the preseason game. He didn't really get going, and then once the free 3 came out, and man, has he breaking out here. This past Monday night, not as much, but obviously the Vikings, came away with the win, even though he had a couple of catches. I mean, don't get me wrong. But I feel like there's guys that will, after they rest and they get back, and then once they get in the swing of things, then you see that production go up. With CMC, nothing. Absolutely. Jack, I'm with you. He was in one of my other leagues too, and I was almost dead last. It was awful, my friend. It was terrible. So
if I can win the Zona League without CMC, I'm just saying, guys, you gotta figure something else out next year. I'm hanging on by a thread trying to survive without him.
Well, there's been a lot of trades with that as well, and we definitely discussed that as well. But we're going to make changes. Again, this is the first year, and obviously we'll make sure that it's all set and ready to roll. So, guys, let's just get to this week real quick, because there's a lot of people that are going to the waiver wire. They're like, all right, this guy's injured. I got to bring in somebody. Like, what would you say? What would you tell people? Where would you target if you needed let's start with receiver here. If you need a receiver this week, and there's somebody on the waiver wire that could potentially have a very good game, that you can do the plug and play, if you will, and whatnot. Who would you kind of target this week here on the waiver wire if you're looking for a wide receiver or something? So let's start with Jack this time. Go ahead.
I'm actually going to pivot just because Tyler and I have talked about this, and I know he's got a big pick for a wide receiver this week. So I'll let you start.
Go ahead.
Yeah. For me, it's going to be Jalen McMillan for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's had a little bit of a mini breakout here the last couple weeks. Jack and I actually talked about him on the podcast right when Chris Godwin went down. But for those that don't know, he's a rookie, so he's really still getting into the playbook and learning everything. He was the third, fourth receiver behind Godwin, Sterling Shepard. And so he's slowly coming into his own, and he seems to have taken over that number 2 role from Sterling Shepard. Had touchdowns the last 2 weeks, and he's starting to get some of that PPR work as well. And it's also, by the the way, playing the absolutely awful Dallas Cowboys defense on Monday Night Football. So not only that, you get to watch him play as well. That's always fun too. So give me some Jalen McMillan on some Monday Night Football for the Bucks this week.
Ooh, Jalen McMillan. I love the name too. Just McMillan against that vaunted Cowboys defense run by Mike Zimmer. Oh man, it's just this. Yeah, it's going to be a field day for Baker, hopefully. But that's not surprising. Like, I actually picked him up in the Zoner League, by the way. So you never know, Tyler. It could come back to you. No, just kidding.
Yeah, that one might hurt me. You can't be doing that. And I can't be taking my advice and making me lose.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, too good. McMillan, make sure you go on the waiver wire zoners, and if you're looking for a wide receiver and whatnot, let us know or take care of it. So, Jack, what do you got?
Yeah, so I want a running back instead, just so we can kind of give you a little bit of anything depending on what you're looking at. But I have a smash guy that I'm trying to pick up in every league that he wasn't already owned. Just trying not to focus on any guys that already should be rostered everywhere. But this guy was dropped kind of recently after a good start to the season. So Jerome Ford, running back from the Browns. He started the year with Nick Chubb out, and surprise, surprise, Nick Chubb got hurt again last week. So he's out for the season. And that leaves Ford as the clear running back one. Last week, he already put up 18.4 fantasy points. And you could say, well, if it was a easy matchup, whatever. It was against the Chiefs, who are a really good run defense. So that says a lot to me. And then now we just got news in the last day that the Browns are going to go ahead and bench Jameis, which makes any fantasy lover sad because he just throws it and doesn't care. But they're benching him for a Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And if you don't know that name,
DTR, baby.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that name, and as you shouldn't, because he's not going to be very fantasy or productive relevant. But because of that decision, that makes me think they're going to lean on the run even more than, say, if Jameis was in there and they just kept hucking the ball down the field. So it's against the Bengals. I expect the Bengals to probably be up early, so you could have a little bit of a game script issue, but they're not going to have a lot of options moving the ball through the air, and the Bengals defense is pretty bad. So I'd have no problem starting Jerome Ford as like a running back 2 this week. So if you can get him as a flex, even better.
Good to know.
Yeah, keep an eye out. I'm sure people are going to their waiver wire right now.
I've got Ford in the Zona League, so I'm going to take that.
Let's go. Let's go, man.
For your playoff push, right?
Oh, of course, out of the consolation bracket, baby. Here we go.
Hey,
we come for that consolation title.
This could have been the top 4 right here, guys.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. But there were trades that have been happening and everything.
I'm
but
also going against my wife this week, so.
So there's some added, yeah.
Tyler knows something about that.
There's going to be a question about that later, so we'll hold off any purchasing on that. So.
I love it. Oh my gosh. So. Just kind of off the cuff, and just because there's been some news in Atlanta, Kirk O'Chains, my guy, Voldy's guy, our guy here on the show, was benched. He's benched. Michael Penix coming in. Do you expect Penix to have a big fantasy impact here coming up for the Falcons this week, or is it just like don't even think of it? Like, what do you guys think? Whoever wants.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm a closet Falcons guy. So it was tough. It was tough for me to see because I'm certainly a Kirko guy as well. But I don't. If you're thinking of it in fantasy terms, certainly not a guy that I'm going to run out there and start. There's even in a 12, 14 team league, there's plenty of guys out there that are going to give you a bigger benefit this year. It's going to be a learning curve for him. I mean, granted, Michael Penix is coming out. He was the leading passer in the nation in college football for Washington and led them to the national championship game.
Right.
So the skills are there, but I think it certainly takes some time to translate to the NFL. And again, he barely got any preseason snaps as well since they were getting Kirk under center. So I think it'll be tough going. They are technically still in the playoff push and even for the NFC North, but I'm not running out to start Penix in any fantasy leagues, but it'll be fun to watch if nothing else.
Yeah, just to see where he's at with things. Very, very interesting. Jack, what do you got?
Yeah, that was going to be my only other 2 cents. Was I was kind of surprised they made the move while they're still in the playoff hunt, because I guess that signals to me that you think he gives you a better chance to win these last 3 weeks than Kirk, which, I mean, anybody probably gives you a better chance to win than Kirk the way he's been playing lately. But this seems more of like a move that you would usually do if you're like, okay, we're pretty much out of it. Let's see what we have next year with the young guy for a couple of games and then make our decision from there next season. So I'm a little bit surprised. I don't know that you're going to be able to count on him fantasy relevant wise, but could it be a step up from Kirk? It's not tough to get to. I think he's probably a little bit more mobile than Kirk is, and they have a lot of weapons on that team that just for whatever reason haven't been utilized consistently. So that's what I'm thinking.
Don't get me started.
Never.
Don't even get me started on him, man.
The amount of dynasty teams that I own him in is way too large. He was such a stamp. As soon as he got drafted, I'm like, this is the guy I'm going to own forever, and make me sad every time.
Can you even call Kyle Pitts a bust if he doesn't even get the football? Like, can you? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
He's a specimen, and athletic specimen. Yeah. Best testing combine of all time. For NFL tight ends, highest drafted high end of all time, and they're just like, we are never going to throw him the ball.
He was supposed to be what Bowers is. I don't like that. Bowers is doing exactly what Pitts was supposed to be 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Bowers has been amazing too.
Damn you, Atlanta.
Yeah, damn you. So let's give me 3 players that are must starts this week, not off the waiver wire, but just like if you obviously like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, guys like that. What players do you think are absolute must starts this week in the fantasy football playoffs? Whoever would like to start, go ahead.
I'll start because I'm going to get back to being the positive guy because I'm going to give you 3 starts and Tyler's going to talk about some sits. But so I went off guys that weren't the clear cut options. Obviously, if you got a top 20 player, you're putting them in for the most part at running back, receiver. If you got a top 5, top 7 quarterback, it's a no brainer. But I'm going to give you a quarterback, running back, and then a receiving option that I think are all probably rostered, but they're all probably guys that you're like him and Han on your bench, whether to put them in over like a different option you got. So this week, quarterback, we're going off of Tyler's earlier pick for starting in the playoffs with Jalen McMillan. We're going with his quarterback, Baker Mayfield. I think he is probably that fringe guy. I think he's in that like quarterback 5 to 10 range where you're like, do I do him or do I go with a different streaming option? What am I going to pick? Baker has the last 2 weeks, 25 plus points in both of those matchups. So he's surging at the right time. You're going to look at the right matchups and say it's versus the Raiders and the Chargers, and they're both bad defenses. So, yeah, that could be the reason. But so are the Cowboys, like Tyler just talked about. Their defense is terrible on the ground and in the air. In 6 of the last 9 games, quarterbacks have scored 23.8 or more points against the Cowboys. 2/3 on average. Baker is at least in the above average category this year. So unless you've got one of the like 3 to 4 elite guys, like the locked and loaded, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels even, I think I would put him in over pretty much anybody else this week because I think he has top 5 upside. That's my quarterback pick for you. I'll just keep rolling.
Keep rolling. Yeah.
I've got running back, and this is going to pain me to say it. It's gonna shock DJ Matty over here, but I am picking Alexander Mattison as my surprise running back start this week.
Really?
I'm going deep. I'm not saying he's a top 20 option or anything crazy.
Right.
Sincere McCormick, the running back the last couple of weeks that looked great for the Raiders. Yeah. He is now out, likely for the rest of the season. So Alexander Mattison or Amir Abdullah, you got to get really gross if you got some running back injury issues. They're worth flex starts only because the Raiders are playing the Jaguars this week, which might be the only team capable of making the Raiders look good. The Jaguars give up the 3rd most running back points per game this season and the 5th most in receptions, which Madison and even Abdullah are both capable of doing. So it's not going to be pretty. It could easily be like a 13-10 gross game and not a lot of touchdown upside, but I think he's good enough to get you. Tyler and I usually use our threshold of like 8+ points. We call it as a win for like a flex streamer, like a plug your nose and put him in type of thing. So I think he's easily capable of that and possibly even more just with that bad matchup.
Sure.
So lastly, I'm going to make you a little bit happier because the Alexander Mattison one was gross. But for receiver, doing another kind of guy that probably most people have. Well, you couldn't have started him for most of the year, but the last couple of weeks, maybe even though he's been doing well, you didn't know if you could believe it. So receiver-wise, hometown guy, Adam Thielen, now on the Panthers, formerly of the Vikings. Yeah. He had a down-ish week last week with just 10.1 PPR points, which is obviously more inflated scoring. But he still had 7 targets. It just wasn't always connecting for him. So 7 targets for 3 games in a row now since he came back from injury. So as soon as he returned healthy, he's hit the ground running. In the previous 2 weeks before that, he had 19.2 or more PPR points in both of those. So clearly he's Bryce Young's number 1 target. And the team they're playing this week, the Cardinals, have let at least 1 wide receiver in 3 out of the last 4 weeks hit 16.9 points. So that's the baseline versus the Cardinals, and he's already been doing it against other teams. So I think he could be a very, very sneaky one where if you slide him in as a flex, you can maybe make up some points that you aren't probably going to be projected to get.
Well, for one, I know that hurts you a lot with the Madison thing. I know it's tough. I mean, ever since we had him or last time, because we're gonna get to our dud here in a second. Yeah, so sit tight for that one. But I don't blame you because I did have McCormick in one of my because I'm just like I got to get somebody because this was the Christian McCaffrey league I was in and whatnot. And he actually did pretty well, and now out for the season. Who do you have left? Well, Alexander Madison. Well, he kind of got a safety against the Falcons this past week, which I'm just like, this doesn't surprise me one bit. Man.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise any of us, at this point, because he just runs right straight up the middle. It's like, dude, you got to find the cutback lanes.
Move, yeah.
Anyway, Tyler, what do you got?
For my sits this week, mine are pretty easy. I got a couple running backs and then a receiver. So I'm going to get the receiver out of the way since it goes off a lot of what Jack said earlier. As much as it pains me, I think you got to bench Jerry Jeudy this week. For everything that Jack mentioned, they're making the change from Jameis over to DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And I just think that passing game is absolutely going to go completely down the toilet. They're not going to try to play in a firefight with the Bengals, right? They're going to try to keep the ball on the ground. They're going to give it to a lot of Jerome Ford, as Jack was mentioning before. So I think Jerry Jeudy, as great as he has been the last handful of weeks, don't just look at the name recognition and how he's been doing. He's truly benchable this week with DTR under center.
Oof.
That's a tough one, I know. That's a tough one to swawlow.
Yeah, that's tough.
Jerry Jeudy as we speak.
Yep.
I love it.
Swap that guy. All right.
Oh, there you go.
Apparently, I'm just talking about Voldy's team. I think I didn't
Pretty
even
much. I mean,
just
that just means I'm
what to
drafting
do.
well, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, let's get to the one or just the so far this season.
Sure.
What player would you say was the pleasant surprise this year? Would you say? Whoever wants to start, go ahead.
All you.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, and mine. Jack will love this one because he can stroke his own ego for a minute here. But I got to go with Jackson Smith and Jigba. It was his guy coming into it, and he's been incredible. He made his prediction to start the year that there you go.
Ooh, nice.
I think I got that for Jack for his 30th.
My 29th. How dare you? Not
29th, whatever you are. Not old enough. But he's been incredible. He said he was going to overtake DK this year, and he's done, it seems like, exactly that. Granted, DK's been hurt a little bit, but Jason drafted outside the top 32 at wide receivers. He's currently wide receiver 6 in PPR leagues. He has averaged 21.3 PPR points over the last 6 weeks, going back prior to their bye when he put up his 37. And now he gets Minnesota this week, who is legitimately number 32, worst against receivers, and just as bad against slot receivers. So keep plugging in JSN. He's had an incredible season, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon over the next couple weeks.
Well, that's perfect because I listen to you guys, and I take pretty much all your advice that you give me, and I have Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's killing. He's just damn
Killing
good.
it.
Damn. So thank you, gentlemen, for helping me on with that. So, Jack, who do you got?
Yeah, first, really quick, with the Vikings, I prefer to think of us as 32nd best against the Vikings, or against in the past, because it just seems like a little better positivity.
Fair.
But yeah, I love that pick with JSN. I will say, for me, one that not a lot of people were actively looking to draft this year. This was kind of one of my hidden gems, or we call them our diamonds in the rough to start the season. That's going way out of the top few rounds, but a guy that you think has potential. I'm going with not Sam Darnold because that seems like too much of a layup since we're Vikings homers. But I'm going with Rico Dowdle, the running back from the Cowboys.
Your guy.
He's currently running back 25, so I mean it's nothing crazy over the top like a league winner. But he was drafted in the 11th round of ADP at the start of draft season. And I think he'd be much higher if the Cowboys gave him the lead role from the start versus trying to give touches to the ghost of Zeke's past for the first half of the season. So I looked up numbers just because I was curious. When Dowdle has been given just 50% of snaps or more, not a very high threshold. So a couple of those games have been right at the 50 mark. He's averaging 14.8 points per game in those 7 games, I believe. in the last 3 weeks straight, he's got 112 plus rushing yards alone. So not even talking receiving work. So that's coming at the same time as when the Cowboys are quote unquote just kind of imploding and having a struggling offense.
Yeah.
Rico Dowdle is still putting up work, and he's like, when he's getting volume, he's producing on the ground. So I said that to start the year. He was a guy that was efficient whenever he was given the workload, but he again wasn't given it last year consistently. And I was like, this is the year they're finally going to do it. And we had to wait a while, but he's producing at the right time.
Yeah.
It could be a fantasy playoff league winner.
Oof. And especially when they brought in, or is Dalvin Cook even on the practice squad with them now, or is he gone? Like, it's crazy because they didn't know who their guy was going to be. Dowdle obviously seems to be that now and whatnot, so it's very interesting what's going on in Dallas. So, all right, guys, who was an absolute dud? Who was the Alexander Madison this year for you guys in fantasy football? Jack, I got to start with you this time. I mean, come on. What do you got?
Yeah, I didn't have as many spicy ones because I didn't want to pick ones that we projected that we saw coming. So I was trying to find a guy that I was completely wrong on. I was very, very wrong, like a lot of people, on Tyreek Hill this year. He was the wide receiver 2. I think I've got him in 3 leagues because I was drafting him ahead of a couple of those other running backs after CMC and trying to get him at like the 3 or 4 pick. Wide receiver 20 right now, and it's the first time I looked this up. In the last 5 years, every other season, he has been wide receiver 2 or 6 exactly. So it's the first time he's not at least wide receiver 6. And you could say, well, I mean, that happens when you miss a game or two here and there and receivers fluctuate. He hasn't missed one game. He's played every single week, and he's still wide receiver 20. So you usually can get production and volume over some of those guys that miss a couple of weeks. Obviously, the Tua injury has been the biggest impact of that. But even since he's come back, he's had a couple of good games in there. But to start the season, he was one good and a couple of bad ones, and then just a string of really rough ones where it's just he's not getting the targets. When he's had a couple of them, he had some rough drops in the last couple of weeks that he should have been able to come down with, and it's just not – he's not the league winner where he's capable of putting up 30 points as a wide receiver that he has been. So he is a guy that has hurt me a lot this year, and I was definitely not seeing coming.
Wow, yeah, it's not Alexander Madison-esque from last year.
Well,
but,
no, that one I saw coming.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. You definitely did. But Tyreek Hill being wide receiver 20, I mean, good lord, that's just crazy in itself. So, Tyler, who do you got?
Yeah, for me, I'm the heralded boy coming into this from the rookie draft. I've got to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. He was going just crazy high. He was going at the tail end of second round, somewhere around like the 24th pick. Yeah, he's wide receiver 31 right now. And exactly to Jack's point, he has missed 0 games. And he's had Kyler Murray. It just turns out incredibly inefficient. He's averaged somewhere around a 45 to 50% catch rate. And again, some of those off target with Kyler scrambling and things like that.
Yeah.
But for a guy that you drafted at the tail end of round 2 and him coming in and being wide receiver 31 with absolutely no missed games, it's been absolutely brutal. They are feeding James Conner, and they seem to be absolutely in love with Trey McBride. Understandably, that's that number 1 target. So I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has just fallen short of what those very lofty expectations were, even though he's a rookie. So I'm ready for the second-year bounce back. It seems to come a lot, but right now you can't do much with Marvin Harrison.
Maserati Marv probably have to wait an extra year or 2.
Draft the rookie.
Fair enough. So we got to get to this one. We'll have to forego the second one that we got, but the last one here, since we got rapid fire here coming up, guys, non-fantasy in this. The past couple weeks, there's been a lot of talk from our wonderful national media, sports media, right, Voldy, about whether the Vikings should or should not re-sign Sam Darnold. Now, I'm not going to give an opinion yet because the season isn't over. But since we have you guys on, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this situation. Because last year we talked about how can we get Kirk back and at a reasonable price, and we talked about that. But since we have kind of this question here, I mean, should the Vikings re-sign Sam Darnold if the season ended today, would you say yes or no? What do you think? Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a tough one because at the end of the day, when you're talking real NFL, it's got to come down to cost, right? How many years is that going to look out? I think if we can get him on somehow like a 1-year deal or whatever he's willing to do, he's not going to be willing to do that. So I think from a true Vikings perspective, I don't know that we're going to be able to. I think he's going to be sought after enough that we're not going to be able to. But I think if we can and for the right price, we certainly should. Because, I mean, J.J. McCarthy, we don't know what we have out of them. And as you see a lot of the NFL teams, if you have that capable veteran backup that can sit there, Sam Darnold's only 28 years old. He's very young when it comes to quarterback terms. So if we can keep him on the team, I think that's a great Viking move. I just don't know if we'll actually be able to do it. But I think it would be the right move if we can.
It all comes down to pricing, and I think that's kind of how we, pointed up towards. And, I mean, this quarterback room right now, Darnold, McCarthy obviously, but injured, Daniel Jones, for goodness sake. And then after that, you got Nick Mullins, Brett Rippon out of all of these guys. And it's insane because one of them's only contract for this season.
Gunslingers,
so it's crazy in itself. So, I'm with you on that, Tyler. So, Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be spicy considering it's mostly Vikings fans that listen to this, but I'm going to say no. I think pretty much for the reasons that Tyler said, I just don't see a way that it makes sense. Yes, we have a ton of cap space this next season, but that is partially based on the fact that we did this exact same decision last year and chose to let Kirk Cousins walk. And while we didn't know we were going to get the production from Sam Darnold, seeing the pieces that we were able to add with that money, like our defense looks night and day differently. Bringing in Van Ginkel, Grenard, Blake Cashman, all these guys on like 1-2 year deals, it's completely changed things. So like, do you give a quarterback 30 to 40 million, or do you bring in like 4 to 5 impact players instead? And I just like that better. Plus the fact, like if I'm looking at it from Sam Darnold's perspective, he obviously early round pick, had a good rookie deal, but has struggled for his entire career until coming here now. I don't think that it makes sense for him, besides financially, that we wouldn't be able to pay him or shouldn't pay him that much. I don't think it makes sense financially for him to double down on a 1-year deal. Like, what's he going to do better than now? Is his value is at an all-time high, and then you risk like either having a down year for some reason, and maybe everybody goes, oh, maybe he's not as good as we thought, or God forbid he gets injured and he has no security. Like, this is the time for him to double down and go and get I think he gets like a 3 to 4 year contract, and it's going to be like an upwards of 25 to 30 million a year. Like some bad team like the Raiders is going to go and pay him a bunch of money because they don't have anything better to do with it anyways. And he's going to want a chance to start. I think if you told him, hey, you should come back here and we try to run it back, like the second McCarthy's healthy, maybe we don't start him right away, but like fans are going to want to see him. Like you don't draft a quarterback early in the first on a cheap rookie deal to then just sit him. I mean, unless you're the Packers with Jordan Love, but most teams don't do that. So like, I don't like that for Darnold with like a rookie quarterback, top 10 pick breathing down his neck if anything doesn't go well. I think he's going to want to go be the guy somewhere else as well as it worked out here. So it would suck, but I feel like we brought in Cousins and he played the best arguably of his career here in this system. We brought in Darnold and he's night and day played way better here in his career than he has. So I think it's the system more than anything. I think Kevin O'Connell does a good job fitting quarterbacks, and our scheme with all these weapons is designed well. Our defense now putting the quarterbacks in good positions. So I think we probably more likely run it back with another like cheap veteran option deal. Like we could keep Daniel Jones on, as gross as that sounds. I guarantee he's got better weapons here and coaching than he did in New York. So not saying he's going to be Darnold, but like, is he good enough to like give us the time and keep us in it? And maybe McCarthy's ready by week 5, week 6. Like that seems like a more realistic plan for us and fits what we're trying to do long-term to me.
It's not a bad way to look at it, and especially I'm just getting sick of like they're like, oh, the Vikings are idiots if they don't bring him back. Oh, the Vikings are idiots if they do bring him back. It's just like we haven't even finished the freaking season, you know? It's like, it's insane to me. But, you know, and at this point, I'm kind of with you guys because it's like you don't just draft J.J. McCarthy and be like, yeah, dude, you gotta wait a little bit, you know what I mean? And then bring in back Darnold and everything. We just got to see how this plays out. I mean, there's a whole lot of season left, and they made the playoffs. See how that turns out. So, well said. Voldy, let's do some rapid fire.
All right, we already did talk about, of course, picks made throughout the fantasy team, but I want to know, out of your guys' teams here, what has been the best and worst picks that you've made for your fantasy teams this year? Jack, we'll start with you.
Oh boy. I have weirdly a lot of shares of David Montgomery, and I didn't plan on doing that, but he was like crazy Mr. Consistent this year, so he helped me in a lot of different leagues. I was super high on Jaden Daniels to start the season, which obviously had a lot of hype, but quarterbacks wise, didn't expect him to be breaking into the top 5 with his rushing ability as quickly as he did. And then Tyler knows I was banging the drum on Trey McBride all year. I was hyped on him being like tight end 1 overall. I said as a bold prediction he was going to easily outscore Travis Kelce, which at the time was not a guarantee. Right. So he's in at least half of the leagues I'm in as well. Took him over Kelce, took him over Andrews, who at the time was like a mid to late second round pick. Over Laporta, I had him. Like I was in on him. So those guys have helped me a lot. Conversely, I have gotten hurt in a handful of leagues by both CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek this year from the aforementioned quarterback issues. So they would be my rough ones that I was totally wrong and out on, I would say.
All right. Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, for me, the one I was definitely in on and felt like I absolutely nailed was one of my guys that I mentioned, Scary Terry McLaurin. Finally got a quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and it paired perfectly with Jack's my guy because he went with Jaden and I went with Scary Terry, and it turns out that connection has been absolutely great. So he was going somewhere around wide receiver 27, 28. He's wide receiver 6 right now. So he's been absolutely killing it, and that's one I absolutely nailed. As far as when I was in on, Voldy, I'm sorry. I was banging the drum for Kyle Pitts. I'm like, he's got Kirk Cousins. This is it. He's going to do it. I've got a gunslinger. Yeah, I was wrong. I give up. I'm sorry, guys.
It's hard to be
year.
productive when they don't throw you the damn ball. But which player do you guys regret not taking? Maybe you look back at the draft results and you picked one guy over another guy that's like, I should have taken him. Look at the year he's had. Tyler, we'll start with you. Who's one player that you regret not taking?
It sounds kind of brutal, but it was Saquon. I had an opportunity in our main league. I went with Garrett Wilson over Saquon, so that was brutal. Yeah. Again, I know PPR and whatnot, but I had the opportunity for my running backs to be Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. So I can only imagine how amazing that would have been. Granted, I still did plenty well with Garrett. He had his weeks when before Devontae came there and when Devontae was hurt and things like that. So he's still doing just fine, but when I could have had Saquon and Derrick Henry, and instead I have Garrett Wilson and Derrick Henry, that's a tough one to swallow.
Jack, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say Saquon also. Another one that came to mind that I was actively, like, vocally out on was Kyren Williams, and he started out the year very, very well. Kind of tapered off a little bit, but he was just crazy consistent. I just didn't think, listen, they're going to have both receivers back. Like, Kyren Williams has been glass. They just drafted Blake Corum. I don't see a way where he's given the bell cow volume, and it's happening. So I regret I don't have him in one spot, and he was Mr. Consistent in the back end of the first, early second.
We go on here. Of course, we did know coming into this season for fantasy football, surefire number 1 was going to be CMC as that number 1 fantasy player. Early forecasting for 2025. Who do you see as being the number 1 fantasy player for 2025?
Oh, man. For me, this is a tough one, especially when I said the running back resurgence is here. I think the default one is going to be Jamar Chase. I think, especially in PPR leagues, that connection is just absolutely there. But I will not be surprised if you see Jahmyr Gibbs going up there. Ooh. Again, I know Monty's back there as well, and they've split that work. But Jahmyr Gibbs, even with Monty, hasn't played a game with him out yet. Jahmyr's running back 3. They are just absolutely splitting that work, but Jahmyr is still getting his through the air as well. So just think if Monty takes some extra time to heal or maybe gets a little bit less or whatever that looks like, I think he'll be fully healthy for next year. But watch Jahmyr Gibbs be somewhere in that top 2 to 3 picks next year.
I like that. Jack, how about you?
I like that a lot. I think, especially with Monty now going down for the rest of the season, if Gibbs shows up down the playoff stretch, that's all everybody's going to remember. So I think recency bias will boost him up a little bit. I was going to say Jamar as one of my one because I think the only other one close to him is JJ, and especially if Darnold leaves and we got a question on the quarterback situation next year, that's enough to keep Jamar up in the fantasy players world. But I'll say the other one, Tyler talked about it already with the running back resurgence and this guy specifically, but Saquon, like there's nothing in his system and his position right now that's going to change from here to next year. So barring an injury down the stretch, they're still going to be an elite offense with Jalen Hurts, and everyone's going to look at those 11 touches where where Saquon went down at the 1, and they're like, if he gets 4 of those, he's already an even better running back 1 overall. So I think it'll be him or Jamar as the 2 that everybody's going to him and haw about as of now.
We talked about the number 1 fantasy player for next year, but of course we got to talk real life draft, NFL draft 2025. Who do you see ending up at the number 1 overall pick for 2025 in the real world NFL draft?
Interesting.
You're more dialed into college, so.
Yeah, I think it'll actually kind of depend whether right now it's the Raiders, could be the Giants. Those are essentially the 2 gunning for the number 1 pick right now. If it's the Raiders, I think they go Shooter Sanders, no question about it. It seems like that connection is definitely there. Deion's in their ear as well with Antonio Pearson. He's like, draft both my boys. Hot take, and just because I've seen it everywhere and I think it would be fun, Shooter Sanders goes to the Raiders and Deion ends up on the coaching staff of the Raiders. I think that would be awesome. If it's the Giants, I think honestly opposite. I think they will go Cam Ward from Miami. He's had a phenomenal season, and I still think the Raiders at 2 end up with Shooter Sanders. So I think those ties are just so deep there. And Shooter has been very vocal, as has Deion, like, we will only play for certain teams. So I wouldn't take that risk. I would just take they're 1A, 1B. You can go whichever way you prefer. But I think regardless, Shooter ends up in LA and Cam Ward ends up as a Giant.
I like it. Jack, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say Cam Ward by default, number 1 either way, because of what Tyler just said. So he took the words out of my mouth that I think if for some reason the Giants get the number 1 pick, that they'll make it clear that they don't want to play there. So I think Cam Ward goes 1 either way just by default, and I think maybe they'll be looking at it as, well, he was like in the Heisman running, his team, he did a little bit better versus like the flashiness of Colorado, so people might look at it as more of like a safe option if you're doing that franchise quarterback. But yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think Deion ends up coaching in Las Vegas, and that's going to be the tie there. I think he's going to make it happen because they're both going there as a package.
Gross. Finally here, any helpful advice with facing your wife in fantasy football this week? Happy wife, happy life. This will be the second time at least that we'll face against each other, but this is playoffs. I mean, I play for keeps personally. I need more bragging rights on my side. Any helpful advice?
You got to keep your marriage if you want to be smart and not upset her this week. But I was going to say, if it's the regular season, man, it's very different where I'm like, I'm okay keeping her happy, but playoffs is a different game where I think you just got to, championships and trophies are forever. So, I mean, she could be mad at you as long as she wants. She'll probably forget in the offseason, and at least your name's still on the trophy.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, she does probably have the best name in the listener league with Big Richard Darnold right now. So, I mean, she couldn't put Dick. I tried to find a way for her to put Big Dick Darnold, but she had to go with Richard. But, I mean, that's all that I've got for rapid-fire questions, fellas.
I love it. Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, with that being said, we went a little over time, but that's why we love having you guys on here. We love talking fantasy football. Tyler, I'd wish you luck this week, but I guess I can't technically. But we'll see. And again, if it comes down to it, it is what it is. I'm going to give it my best. Hawk, no Tua is going to try to get it rolling here. So we'll see how that goes. But, guys, again, thanks for coming on. Love talking with you guys. And we'll see how all these fantasy championships end up, and I'm sure we'll be talking. So make sure you guys check out the Brotherly Ballers podcast on YouTube. New episode dropped today, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it'll drop tomorrow morning. Yep.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning. Make sure you check it out on the YouTubes, the whole deal. And, so thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon. All right?
Thank you.
See you guys.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherly Ballers podcast. Check out more content on youtube.com/@thebrotherlyballers.